Hey there, budgeteers. Are you ready to unlock the power of each payday and take control of your finances like a boss? Introducing the Payday Power Planner from New Money Habits. This isn't your average budgeting tool. Oh no. With the Payday Power Planner, you'll harness the unique rhythm of your paychecks to supercharge your financial game. Say goodbye to the confusion of monthly budgets and hello to the clarity of every payday. You'll know exactly when money is coming in and when it's going out, giving you the edge you need to stay on top of your finances. But that's not all. With the Payday Power Planner, you'll easily spot whether you're rocking a surplus or facing a deficit. Armed with this knowledge, you'll make informed decisions that set you up for financial success. It's time to transform your relationship with money and create the new money habits you need to achieve financial freedom. Get your hands on the Payday Power Planner from New Money Habits today and start making every dollar count. Don't let financial stress hold you back. Create a better plan for your money and seize the power of your pay period and thrive with the Payday Power Planner. Visit newmoneyhabits.com now to grab your free copy and unleash your financial potential. On this episode of the New Money Habits podcast, we continue discussing financial abundance with our special guest, Catherine Vanderlyn. What's up, budgeteers, and welcome to the New Money Habits podcast. I'm your host and one of the co-founders of New Money Habits, Coach Nino Villa. Today on the New Money Habits podcast, we're going to continue our conversation with Catherine about financial abundance. If you have any questions, be sure to hit us up on social at New Money Habits and follow us on your favorite podcast platform, or tell your smart speaker to play the latest episode of the New Money Habits podcast. If you want to help out the show, consider leaving a 5-star rating and review. We cannot thank you enough for those 5-star ratings and reviews. They truly help us spread this message of hope to people looking for a better plan for their money. Now let's get into today's episode. All right, so now that somebody is got their $2,500 or whatever their starter emergency fund or peace of mind fund is going to be, and they're contributing up to their match into retirement savings, next you say, pay off that high interest debt. Ooh, high interest debt. First of all, why? Why high interest debt? Why not just balance lowest to highest, pay off the smallest one, and snowball your way through it?
Well, most of my clients will use a debt snowball, right? We go through a few different calculations, and some of them use an I hate this method, which is paying off. It's usually like PayPal or Amazon or an Apple card or something like that, or something with emotional significance. But I put in here, pay off high interest debt, because that is, and I qualify that as a 5% or higher, not including your mortgage. If your mortgage is over 5% right now, just hold on tight and refinance when it goes down, right? So we're not lumping that in here. But other high interest debt is eating away at what you could be saving for retirement. So I'm thinking of things like credit card debt, personal loans, anything that is over that 5%. Yeah. IRS debt is usually, maxes out at 30 if you read the guidelines, plus fees. And so that's definitely qualified as a high interest debt, IRS tax debt. So everybody picks a different method for this. My favorite method, and the one, if we do this calculation, if I have somebody who's like really into letting me nerd out in front of them, we'll do the payment versus balance ratio. And so I'll take the minimum payment divided by the whole balance and figure out, all right, if you pay this off, what, it's a time calculation, right?
Yeah.
So how much benefit can you get from paying off this one first? And so whatever's the best benefit on the snowball or on the monthly budget, I use that term wrong, but whatever. Then they'll go with that.
Yeah.
So if like something has a balance of $2,500, but their payment is $300, and their car loan has a $320 payment, but it's a $25,000 car loan, well, guess what? Paying off the $2,500 thing is going to free up a lot more money in their budget than the car loan. So
that's right. I think the way we like to go about it at New Money Habits is when we get to debt elimination, and unfortunately we're just in a position where we don't have like that attractive like debt snowball, debt avalanche. Like we don't have we just call it kicking debt to the curb. But when we get into debt elimination, it's not about one specific method. To your point, it's let's see what is going to benefit you the most and optimize your timeline. Paying off high interest debt first usually saves you money in the long run. And so there's reasons for taking those different approaches. At the end of the day, whether you're paying off high interest debt or even no interest debt like medical bills or whatever it is, we believe in doing those things in phases. And we believe in eliminating the debt the unwanted debt is what we call it. So sometimes you're holding a specific debt on purpose. For instance, mortgages. So I have a friend who could easily write a check tomorrow to pay off his mortgage. But because of other financial goals and other financial inputs, like he knows he's not going to stay in this house forever. So why would I sink all that money into this right now when I could take that same sum of money and either buy like a rental property, which is now going to produce income, or do something else? So we talk about eliminating unwanted debt because sometimes, and I want to be very careful, I've shared this on past episodes, but I'll share it again in context. The Bible is very clear that debt comes with great risk and danger. Debt is not a sin. It's not like, oh, that's a salvation issue. You took out debt, so now, I can't do business with you anymore. No, it comes with a lot of warning because it can be very dangerous. So I want to be very careful when I say, hey, you're only getting rid of the unwanted debt and you're holding on to specific debt for a very particular reason. But sometimes, like no interest medical debt, like if I owe 20 grand and I have it, I might want to invest that 20 grand and just go with the payment plan on the medical debt so that I have something that's actually generating revenue and income and that sort of thing. So there's sometimes that you actually sit on some debt very intentionally on purpose for a reason.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the risk isn't always a monetary risk. Sometimes it's a little mental risk, right? It's one of those pieces that you can't really quantify. And so it's a personal decision. It really is. And I think of it more like when Paul says, the eating meat sacrificed to idols. And Paul says basically, I wouldn't eat meat at all if it seemed like a sin to the people around me, right? I'd rather not eat meat and cause somebody to not stumble than to eat meat and cause somebody to stumble and fall. Yep. And so to me, it's really about that's what debt is to me. If you feel like you're having a hard time living your life, serving God, being in full integrity with debt in your life, get it out of your life. Totally fine. If you feel like you can manage and it's okay between you and God to have some debt in your life, that's okay too. There is no right answer to this. There's a little bit of risk. That's what it is. So personally, my husband and I have paid off our house. I don't think it was the best monetary decision, honestly. I don't think it was. I think we'd probably be richer right now if we hadn't done that. And by probably, I mean definitely. We would have been. I'm like, I know that for like I've run the calculations, right? I'm such a nerd. And so not the best decision for us money wise, but it did help me follow God because it freed me up to start this business and run this business. And so I do think that God asked us to do it, and so we did it.
Yeah.
So that's all right, and I'm very open to that.
Personal finances are, as you said, they're personal. Yeah. And so what works for one person is not always going to work for the next person. And we do have to live by our convictions. And so when we are convicted to not have debt in our lives or whatever that might be, and we just take faithful steps of obedience into that. And yeah, I think one of the things that I have learned over the years is helping people eliminate some of the shame and the guilt around past decisions and saying, hey, look, what's done is done, but with new information, with new knowledge, new perspective, and new convictions, we'll just do things differently. And so one of the things that I often suggest, and I did it like myself, one time I was buying a car to replace a vehicle. And I decided in that moment, although I had the money to pay cash, I was going to finance it up front because oftentimes you get a better deal from the dealership when they think they're going to make some money on the financing part of it. So I get a better actual out the door price. And I'm like, I'll just pay it off in 30 days if I want to. What was interesting in that whole experience was learning that at the low 1.9% interest rate that they gave me for the car, even if I kept the loan for the full 5 years and made just the payments, and over the course of 5 years, it would have cost me $1,700 to use somebody else's money. And when I thought about it in those terms, I'm like, interesting. Now, I did pay it off early, not the next month. I think I held on to that loan for 8 months or something before I finally just decided to pay it off. But it was an interesting experiment to go and buy a car that I had the cash to pay for, still finance it, get such a low interest rate that realizing that over the course of 5 years, it had cost me $1,700. Do you think I could have easily taken the difference, that sum of money, and made more than $1,700 over 5 years?
Just put it in a high yield savings account. You're making like half your car loan every month in the interest.
Yeah.
So just an option, Nino.
Exactly. And that goes back to that opportunity cost and just evaluating, but also doing what's right for the person.
Yeah. How are they making money off of that? On a little side tangent.
I don't know, to be honest with you. But that was when interest rates were really, really low. So they were probably making up in volume what they were giving away, on each deal. But
yeah, what a weird thing. Yeah, I bet they were stoked when you paid that off and they could lend the money to somebody else. Oh my goodness. Look, I know how banks work. They're like borrowing money from the government and then they're lending it out and like all this, like, okay. But I still like every once in a while I see those crazy low interest rates and I'm like, but how are they making money off of that? Like, wouldn't you borrow money and then invest it in something that makes more than 1.8, 1.7? Like, it just doesn't make, this is why I'm not in banking. Okay, let's keep going.
Hey there, budgeteers. Good news can only be good news if there's bad news. So what's the bad news? The bad news is you and I have a deadly disease called sin, and this disease causes us to rebel and disobey God. See, God is holy, righteous, and just, and he cannot be in the presence of sin. So this horrible disease of ours separates us from the God who created us. And the bad news gets worse. There isn't anything you or I can do to make ourselves right with God. We are dead in our sins and on our way to an eternity separated from God. but that's not God's will for us. See, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. God did what only God could do. He made a way for us to be reconciled to him through Jesus Christ. Jesus came into the world to save sinners like you and me. While we were still sinners, storing up God's anger against us for our rebellion and disobedience, Christ died for us. Jesus took the punishment that you and I deserve and have earned. Jesus is the substitute for your punishment and mine. Now, isn't that some good news? The word gospel means good news. The gospel of Jesus Christ is that you and I broke God's law and Jesus paid the fine. When we place our faith and trust in Jesus, we get to experience God's grace and mercy. Our gratitude should turn us from our rebellious and disobedient sin toward God, seeking after him and his righteousness. When we do, God gives us a new heart and a new mind. Praise God for his goodness, and remember, God loves, humans sin, Jesus saves. So we're paying off debt. We're doing that in a very personal way, and that's your third step. Then, I'm guessing, you correct me if I'm wrong, once that is paid, those high interest debts are paid, or whichever unwanted debt you have that you want to pay off, now you're shifting gears and you're building up a 6-month emergency fund. Is that right?
That's right. That's right. So it's really about creating that financial stability, creating that safety net. So then, and once all that high interest debt is paid off, it is a lot easier to create a 6-month emergency fund.
Indeed. I know for myself and plenty of examples of people paying debt payments that could easily add up to $2,000 a month. Whether, combination car loan, credit card, student loans, whatever that combination is, you free up $2,000 a month by eliminating that debt. And all of a sudden, saving 10 grand, 20 grand, 30 grand isn't all that difficult. It'd take you 10 months to get to 20 grand with $2,000 a month.
Right. Yeah. So this one ends up becoming pretty easy. It's just a matter of time. That's when people get impatient, right? Well, They get impatient in step 3 is paying off all that debt. But yeah.
I was going to ask, what have you seen as some of the stumbling blocks or the challenges for clients saving up that 6-month emergency fund? What gets in the way?
Oh, there's a lot of I wants, right? So once all that debt is paid off, I had this one client at one point, and they were so close to paying off some high interest debt, so close, and then we meet. And we were meeting every other week. We meet, and I looked at their accounts because we use Monarch Money, so I can see all of their accounts, and I went, "What is this new $81,000 loan here? What's going on? It has an $1,100 per month payment." And they had freed up something like $4,000 a month in debt payments. They make a lot of money. They make like $26,000 post tax a month between the two of them. And the husband went, "Well, I didn't tell you, but I was on the waiting list for a Rivian electric SUV, and it just came out, just shipped, and so the loan activated, and the monthly payment's $1,100 a month, and now I have an $81,000 car loan." And they had been seeing their budget just get freed up and freed up and freed up.
Mm-hmm.
And were so full of these I wants. They had great cars. They had 3 great cars. They were very reliable. They got them places. They weren't breaking down. They were less than 5 years old, but they really wanted these new cars. And another, two more weeks go by, and we're just adjusting the budget, right? Okay, what are your goals? Adjusting the goals. What do you do next? And 2 more weeks go by, so a full 4 weeks since the Rivian car loan came up. And I look at their Monarch account. I go, what is this new loan? What is this one is $84,000. What happened? And it's an $1,150 payment. And the wife goes, well, he got a new car, and so I wanted a new car, and I make more money than him anyway, and I wanted to drive something new. I was like, oh no, it's the I wants. And so I call them the I wants. I think of them like a swamp, right? You've gotten to the high or a high of seeing all this money freed up in your budget, and you're getting close to or in the period where you're building a 6-month emergency fund, and then all of the I wants and the I deserves come in, and it's like a swamp that just takes your shoes from your feet, that, is the muck you can't get out of. And you're just climbing from island to island to island in that swamp. And you can tell I grew up next to a swamp, right? I lost a few shoes in it. My parents hated that. And until you get out, you have to get out of the I wants and balance it until it becomes a fertile ground where you're actually building wealth instead of giving into your I wants. It doesn't make you any happier. In case you're curious, they are not any happier with those two new cars. So they did sell 2 cars. They paid off other things, and now that's their only, that's their debts. But and I'm not living their life, so they get to make their own decisions. Yeah. We just talked again about opportunity cost. What is this really costing them? So anyway, so that's what people face at this point in time.
Yeah. I think when we had you on last, we talked a little bit about, in terms of financial abundance, personal accountability and contentment are two things that are important. Otherwise, it's going to just eat at your peace and your joy, right? Mm-hmm. And it's unfortunate when contentment leaves us, and I myself included, right? It's like, oh, I'm growing weary of the house we live in, or the car I drive, or whatever. Mm-hmm. And the I wants, I love that. The I wants start creeping in. And unless you have a way to overcome them, and one of the ways to overcome an I want is to have a bigger purpose, a bigger financial goal than the thing that you want. That it's like, nope, what I really want. Maria, one of the partners here, and I just had a conversation about what people think they want versus what they actually want, right? Mm-hmm. But because what they actually want sometimes takes longer, requires more work, is harder to achieve, they settle and satisfy themselves with these smaller things, realizing over time, man, it's not what I really wanted at all. And so I might have gotten a hit of dopamine every time I did something, but it's not sustainable.
No, it isn't sustainable. And last time we talked about this is the sustainable joy of giving. Mm. And so if you think about, or if you're in the swamp, the I want swamp, right? And you're trying to go from island to island in a swamp. Visualize this with me if you're listening, okay? So it's a swamp, and there are a few trees, and there are I'm not talking about a swamp in Florida. There are no alligators here, okay? It's a swamp in the Northeast where the worst you're going to get are a few non-venomous snakes. So you can peacefully go from little tree island to little tree island, okay? But if you step in the muck, your shoes are going to be stuck. You're going to be up to your knees in swamp ick. You might get a few snakes around you and frogs. And it's gross. I mean, it's just disgusting. And so the way to peacefully get out of the I wants are giving bridges. So a few planks of giving bridges, because the way to counteract an I want is with an I give.
Hey there, budgeteers. Are you tired of feeling like your finances are running the show? Well, it's time to flip the script and take charge of your money with New Money Habits Financial Coaching. This isn't your typical financial advice. New Money Habits is about empowering you with the knowledge and tools you need to make savvy money moves and build a solid financial foundation. Here's the deal. We're offering a free discovery session to kickstart your journey to financial freedom. Yep, you heard me right. Free. In this session, one of our experienced coaches will help you to pinpoint your financial goals and create a better plan for your money. We're talking about mastering your money mindset, picking up practical money management skills, and having someone to hold you accountable along the way. So, if you're ready to kiss financial stress goodbye and say hello to a brighter financial future, then schedule your free session today to create the new money habits you need to achieve financial freedom.
I think maybe we should move on from the 6-month emergency fund and talk a little bit more, because I think that the next one, step number 5, which is maximizing retirement and health savings accounts. I want to be very specific here, is really, really, really important, because a lot of people will stop at that match, and we're not even getting into like the investing education piece, which please educate yourselves on the investing education piece of like, what do you buy within each account? I can't tell people what to buy when I'm coaching, but I can educate them on how things work, right? And how things have worked. So, and I will say this because nobody's paying me for being on the podcast, and so I can say whatever I want. Whoever came up with target date accounts is one of, I just want to smack him, because people invest in these target date accounts and have no idea what they're doing. They don't even know what the date means. And there's so much opportunity cost lost. So much opportunity lost when people invest in target date accounts. So anyway, let's go. I want to move into maximizing retirement.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to do that?
Of course. So why do you place such an emphasis on maximizing both retirement and health savings accounts?
Yeah. All right. So IRAs, traditional and Roth, that's my first step, right? Maximize an IRA. I don't care if you pick traditional or Roth. I've done all the tax calculations on those. And if you are in the same tax bracket, then it is the same tax. So fine, just pick one. If you think you're going to be rich in retirement and you're not right now, you're making not that much money, put it in a Roth. If you think you're going to have a lower tax bracket in retirement, put it in a traditional account. That's fine. But it is so advantaged, because then you don't, and I have all of these. I have a Roth and traditional IRAs. I have Roth 401ks and traditional 401ks. I have a brokerage account. I have HSA. Actually, I have 2. I need to merge those. But like I see all these. And I've worked with all these with hundreds of people at this point. And so I emphasize this because the government is giving you a gimme. They're basically saying, hey, we know we can't support everybody on Social Security like Norway and Sweden and all these other, countries do. And so we're going to give you a little personal responsibility on your retirement accounts. And so we're not going to tax them that much. Okay. We're going to give you a little tax off at the beginning. Or at the end, we're not going to tax your dividends or the growth. We'll tax them as income, which is better. It is better. So I've run the calculations. It is better. I have a brokerage account. I promise these tax accounts are better. These retirement accounts. So it's just insanely great and protected. It's protected against bankruptcy. I believe some of these. It's protected. Yeah, you do have to split them if you get divorced, but let's just hope and pray that you don't. And maybe work on that, guys. If that's a concern, just go to counseling. It's fine. And we all do it. So Everybody goes to counseling. Nobody cares. There's no whatever
stigma.
But anyway,
yes.
Yeah, there's no you're right. There's no stigma. I'm sorry. I'm all over the place today. But this is just really exciting because we have this opportunity and because you can grow them so big.
And a lot of this makes sense, but then your step number 6 says start a side hustle. So why is that step 6 and not earlier to then help contribute to all these other things we've been talking about, like paying off debt, getting a fully funded emergency fund, and maxing out retirement savings?
Yeah, I get asked this a lot, actually, by people who are like, but I want to start a business. And that's great if you want to start a business. It is so hard to start a business that it will take up all of your time. It's risky. It requires more investment than people think. And it's so hard just to break even in the first 1 or 2 years. Then you hit years 3 or 4 and you're like, all right, this side hustle is starting to make a little bit of money. Okay. Can you imagine trying to pay off your debt or max out your retirement accounts while starting a business? And you're still doing it if you have, when you have a full-time job, but can you imagine trying to hit an emergency fund while starting a business?
It would be incredibly difficult.
I think people would lose hair. They'd probably gain 100 pounds. Like, the stress would be incredible. And I've started a business, right? But my husband and I hit all these things before going to 6. So we had that cushion. We had a year and a half of emergency fund, of living fund, before I quit my job and did this full time. So that's different. So starting a side hustle here, I would just say it's optional. It's also not for, it's not for everybody. And the stress that comes with it should come after you've hit some of these other goals. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a number of clients that I'm working with right now. So I'm working with a couple where the wife is already self-employed and has been for a decade, give or take. So it's not new. But husband is now working into that space. At the same time, husband's now going to go out on his own. His wife, who's been working out on her own, is growing her business. And they're both trying to do this all while not necessarily having these other things in place just yet. So it is a squeeze. It is a real tight squeeze, but they are two go-getters, head down, tell us what our next step is, and we will go and annihilate that next step. As long as they have a plan to follow, they're good. But I'm watching their finances, and it's a squeeze with, and they're young enough and they don't have children yet. And so there's limited responsibilities to so they can take on more risk. And that's what they're doing. They're like, look, we know we're taking on risk because the reward looks promising. And with great risk does come great reward. And so that looks like it will work out in their favor. And then I have
qualify that just for a moment. Sorry.
Yeah, please.
With great risk could come great reward.
That's true, right? It's not a guarantee. It's not a guarantee. Otherwise, we'd all just take great risks because we would know, it doesn't matter. The bigger the risk, the bigger the reward.
Right. Well, it wouldn't be called a risk anymore.
That's right.
So
that's right. I appreciate that qualification. Then I'm working with another couple, and the husband has a great paying W-2 job, but he wants to start a side hustle. And when you said earlier that starting your own business is going to cost you more than you think, they are experiencing that firsthand, where it's it seemed at first like this business was going to have very little overhead. And so the amount of seed money from their personal over to the business to kind of get the business started, they're like, we should be good with this amount. Lo and behold, it hasn't even been 2 months, and that money's gone, and we're already talking about like how much more does it need to be seeded in order to like really gain some traction. And so I hadn't thought about it until this conversation, but you're right. Unless you have these other things firmly in place, it makes starting a side hustle, even one with seemingly little overhead, challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. I agreed. I mean, it really, really agreed. Now, I'm going to just make sure that people aren't hearing what we're not saying, though, because we're talking specifically about side hustles and starting businesses. We're not talking about people getting side jobs.
Mm.
So one of the biggest techniques to hitting all of these goals, and I did it myself. I mean, after I gave myself malnourishment and was having trouble paying things off and couldn't pay my bills, right? And I was eating like bean sprouts. Okay, just not a great health option here. I got a side job. I did not start a business, and that side job helped me get through these steps. It also taught me a lot in terms of time management. But so don't hear what we're not saying. We're talking about starting a side business, a side hustle, not getting a side job where somebody pays you a regular wage.
We live in this kind of side hustle mentality that like, but if I drive Uber or DoorDash or whatever, that is what a lot of people constitute as a side hustle. So what say you on those specific side hustles? Yay or nay?
Oh man, I really, really dislike Uber and DoorDash and like all those delivery things. Some people use them well. And I have one client who Instacarts for all of her discretionary spending. So she's paid off her credit card. She's paid off a car loan. She's paid off a lot of things. And I'm so proud of her. And she's been Instacarting for any sort of discretionary stuff, which is fine. All right. You have to really keep track for those of the mileage on your car. You have to, like, there's a lot to keep track of, and it's kind of in between a job and a side hustle because you are working for someone else. And there have been lawsuits around this. I mean, it really is kind of more of a side job than a side hustle. But because of government qualifications, or some of that tax stuff, you have to make sure that you're keeping track of mileage and you're keeping track of just whatever expenses that you have, right? So I'm not a huge fan because people are really bad at writing things off and can get into trouble or get taxed more than they need to. One or the other tends to swing. So I'd just rather get a side job, like go work at Starbucks. That's okay. You want to say hi to a bunch of people? I'd hate it because I'm introverted, but if you're not, go work at Starbucks. If you are introverted, do something else.
Yeah. Yeah, in the day and age of these 1099 side hustles, I think two important things for anybody who is either already doing it or considering it is, one, what are all the hidden costs that are not obvious? If you're doing rideshare or delivery service, gasoline is an obvious expense. Although I wonder how many times people kind of fail to calculate, like, what did I make minus the gas that I had to use to do that? Mm-hmm. But all the wear and tear on a vehicle, how much more frequently are you replacing tires and doing things like that, and really understanding what are my overall costs. That's one. So understand your hidden costs. The other is what you said about taxes.
Yeah, the self-employment tax that creeps up on people.
Yes. And when you don't know how to write off things properly and all that stuff, at that point, I'd say get yourself a good tax preparer. And no, I don't mean somebody who just works at one of these places that pops up around tax time and then is nowhere to be found after April 15th. I'm talking about like a real tax preparer to help you identify like the side hustle and this driving that I'm doing. Like, what do I get to write off properly and how much of it? And so that you can reduce your taxable income.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Well, then that leads us to the culmination of you started with a starter emergency fund. You started investing to the match in a retirement. You paid off the high interest and unwanted debt. Then you fully funded the emergency fund. You're maximizing retirement and health savings accounts. You started your side hustle, all leading up to building wealth in a brokerage account. So what do you think are the key benefits of investing in a brokerage account after completing these earlier steps?
Right. And this is so specific, right? I've had people change this out to, hey, I want to buy a rental home. Like, that's fine. That's great. Go do that. But I would say I love having just a straight up brokerage account in addition to all of these other options personally, because it's so flexible. So everyone in my family, for better or worse, has become semi-disabled and unable to work by the time they're 55.
Ooh.
And I did my family tree way like 6 generations, 7 generations. It happened to everybody. And they all lived until they were 82 or 83, like legitimately plus or minus a year, maybe. And so my thought is, I'm going to have to retire before I'm 65, most likely, or I'm going to be miserable for 10 years until I can retire, whatever it is. And I need a little bridge, right? I need a bridge account. I need to have something that I can use while I'm not working. Mm-hmm. Now, this is 19 years away from me. I'm actually currently disabled, believe it or not. I'm not on disability. I have a physical disability, but I'm not on disability. And because I can still work, and I just don't think that would be helpful. So, and I don't qualify. And so this is all about building that bridge so that you can retire early if that's a goal for you. Mm-hmm. And so you have the flexibility to access it before you're 59 and a half.
Yep.
So,
yeah, I think maybe said another way is income producing assets, right? Yeah. So whether that's a rental property, whether it's a brokerage account, whatever it might be, if in 6 you started a business, but having multiple streams of income, good idea, very good idea, and that could be a combination of W-2 employment where you're employed by somebody else. It could be that you have your own business. It could be that you have rental residential real estate. It could be that you have commercial rental real estate. It could be a brokerage account, a number of different ways in order to increase the number of income producing streams.
Yeah. And this one's a little bit more around the passive side. So passive income, I know that's a buzzword. Rentals aren't really passive. They're like semi-passive. They qualify according to the government, but they're not really passive. Owning stocks and bonds and having a brokerage account, that's pretty passive. Like you don't need to watch that until you're using it or getting close to using it. You just have to set up strategy and forget it, really. So that's really what this is about. That's what step 7 is.
I like it. A structured approach to, like we said earlier, a starting point to get you moving in the right direction. Take the steps in order, move them about, change the numbers, whatever that is. But at least it's a place to start the conversation. Catherine, will you remind our listeners where they can find you and what you're up to?
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Nino. So I am the founder and owner of Savor Street Financial Coaching. Well, it's financial and executive coaching and education. So you can find me at savorstreet.com. If you attend a church, and would like to put on the church program Financial Abundance, feel free to message me. I have a free gift for you. So that's kind of it at this point.
All right. We'll make sure that your links are in the descriptions so that people can come and visit you. Thank you again for hanging out with us and having another extraordinary conversation. I cannot wait to have you back on.
Oh, I'm excited. I'll see you next time, Nino.
All right. That does it for this episode of the New Money Habits podcast. Remember, if you have any questions, make sure to hit us up on social at New Money Habits and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Please consider leaving a 5-star rating and review to help us spread this message of hope to people looking for a better plan for their money.